Thank you for joining Wars of the Roses. And this is Morgan William from the Encyclopedia of Freemasonry by Albert G. Mackey. Morgan William, born in Culpepper County in Virginia in 1775. He published in 1826 a pretended Exposition of Masonry, which attracted at the time more attention than it deserved. Morgan soon after disappeared, and the Masons were charged by some enemies of the order with having removed him by foul means. What was the real fate of Morgan has never been ascertained. There are various myths of his disappearance and subsequent residence in other countries. They may or may not be true, but it is certain that there is no evidence of his death that would be admitted in a court of probate. He was a man of questionable character and dissolute habits, and his enmity to Masonry is said to have originated from the refusal of the Masons of Leroy to admit him to membership in their lodge and chapter. Born August 7, 1774 in Virginia, Culpepper County, USA, lived at Lexington, Kentucky and Richmond, Virginia, working as a stonemason, going to Canada in 1821 and employed near Toronto, but in 1823 was at Rochester, New York, taking up his residence in Batavia, New York in 1826. He had visited lodges before coming to Batavia, though there is no evidence to show whether Morgan was ever initiated. He was denied admission to the local lodge and chapter at Batavia, and there is usually some good reason for this refusal. But he is credited with receiving the Royal Arch degree at Leroy, New York on May 31, 1825. When a new chapter was proposed in his own town, Batavia, his name was upon the petition, but objection was made and a new one was prepared without his signature. Resenting this action, Morgan became bitter and sought revenge. A local newspaper, the Republican Advocate, was conducted by David C. Miller, who is said to have received the entered apprentice degree at Albany, New York. The two vindictive men concocted a scheme to publish a malicious book on Freemasonry. This purpose on discovery aroused great resentment in the village. Miller's print shop was visited, fire was set to the building, but no serious damage was done. Miller himself was arrested on an insignificant charge, and as a result of this sort of hot-headedness, 4 Freemasons were indicted for riot, assault, and false imprisonment, and 3 others were sent to the county jail. The contract between Morgan and Miller was made in March 1826. Morgan was arrested in July for a debt, and again, on August 19th, he had a similar experience. This was undoubtedly done to separate Miller and Morgan, but the former gave bail and the latter was released 2 days later. However, on September 11, 1826, Morgan was arrested for petit larceny at Batavia and put into jail at Canandaigua. This was for stealing a shirt and cravat. On his examination, he was discharged by the magistrate. He was at once rearrested on a claim that he owed $2.68 to the keeper of a tavern. He admitted this debt and offered to leave his coat as security. This was refused and he was again sent to jail. The next day, a man named Lotos Lawson came to the jail and asked for Morgan's release. During the day, the amount of the execution was paid and Morgan set free. As to what then happened, there are 2 different stories. One is that Morgan was forcibly seized and compelled to enter a coach and was then driven across the country to the mouth of the Niagara River and into Canada. But the other story is that he went voluntarily and that he there received $500 for leaving Miller. This was paid and he left his guides and went into Canada. There was a stay at Fort Niagara until the arrangements were completed, and then the known movements of Morgan come to an end. But the theory that Morgan was taken away by force and given a violent death by drowning gave rise to the anti-Masonic Party in the United States. As early as 1832, there were 141 anti-Masonic newspapers in the United States. The election of 1828 gave Solomon Southwick, the anti-Masonic candidate for governor of New York, 33,335 votes. Martin Van Buren, a Freemason, had 136,783 votes. But in 1830, the anti-Masonic candidate ran behind the leader by only 8,531 votes, 120,361 against 128,892. On the abduction charge alone, several persons were tried. Cheseborough, master of the lodge at the county city, was sentenced to imprisonment for 1 year, Lawson 2 years. Bruce, Sheriff of Niagara County 2 years and 4 months, Sheldon 3 months, and Sawyer 1 month. A badly decayed human body was, on October 7th, 1827, found on the beach 40 miles from Fort Niagara. This at once incited suspicions that the body might be that of Morgan. The remains were claimed as those of him, but on later inquiry identification was made by a Mrs. Monroe that they were those of her husband and were therefore turned over to her. This was done on October 29th, 1827. But the foes of Freemasonry did not believe that fact, nor do they believe it now. Then there were the curious persons subject to mental disorders and who asserted conflicting stories of guilt. Of these were Hill, Vallance, and Whitney, though there is a serious doubt whether the latter has been accurately reported. We need not go into the stories of those who claim to have seen Morgan in other lands. The subject has been discussed freely by brothers E.T. Schultz and Ben Perley Poore. The Grand Lodge of New York in 1826 had 500 lodges, but in 1846 there were only 65 lodges. Of the number of lodges represented in the annual Grand Lodge communications in 1827, there were 228. In 1828, 130. In 1829, 87. In 1830, 77. 1831, 71. 1832, 52, 1833, 56, 1834, 53, and in 1835, 49. The decline and recovery in membership was as follows: 1820, 295 lodges and 15,000 members; 1825, 480 lodges and 20,000 members; 1830, 82 lodges and 3,000 members; 1840, 70 lodges and 5,000 members; 1850, 172 lodges and 12,000 members; 1860, 432 lodges and 25,000 members. From that time, the returning pace was rapid, the growth permanent. Other states had similar experiences. While the order promptly disavowed any sympathy with those who within its own rank might be disposed to punish Morgan for wrongdoing, yet those various resolutions by responsible Masonic bodies did little for the time to check the enmity against the fraternity. Charters were stolen and lodge rooms and equipment defiled. Publicly and privately, the resentment grew, separating families, disrupting churches, and poisoning all these sources of fellowship in the community. Father was arrayed against son, brother against his own flesh and blood, both in politics and business, home and marketplace. The venom of the ulcer spread far and deep. Public disavowal of any further connection with Freemasonry was made by thousands. Among them was that of one member who for 15 years had been Senior Grand Warden of New York State. See Dr. Mackey's Revised History of Freemasonry, Volume 7, Story of Freemasonry, Brother W.G. Sibley, Freemasonry at Batavia, Brother David Seaver, History of Freemasonry in the State of New York, Brother Ossian Lang, History of Freemasonry in Canada, Brother John Ross Robertson, Chapter 7, Volume 2, An American Masonic Crisis, Brother J.H. Tatch, Transactions, Volume 34, page 196, Quatuor Coronati Lodge, number 2076, London. Builder, St. Louis, Missouri, has had several articles, notably The Morgan Affair, September 1926, by brothers J.H. Tatch and E.M. Erickson, the latter also contributing papers of similar type to the Grand Lodge Bulletin, Iowa, 1926. History of Freemasonry in Maryland, Brother E.T. Schultz, 1887, Volume 3, pages 5 through 38. William Morgan, or Political Anti-Masonry, Brother Rob Morris, 1883. Masonic Light, Brother P.C. Huntington, 1886. The Anti-Masonic Party, a monograph by Professor Charles McCarthy, awarded the Justin Windsor Prize by the American Historical Society, Annual Report, 1902, Volume 1, pages 365 through 574, and separately printed in 1903. Miscellany of the Masonic Historical Society, New York, Brother Peter Ross, 1902, pages 5 through 35. These last two works contain many additional references to articles of interest. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment, and if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Roses. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.